from 2017, I came back to Happy and decided to make no decisions. But it's about freedom within guidelines. Most people don't like complete freedom. Most people don't like being told what to do. You have to get rid of the ego.
Because it's actually disrespectful to all the effort and your judgment as an individual.
And at some point, you don't put the effort in anymore,
Exactly,
right? So
exactly.
If our change philosophy is more incremental and organic and less big bang, then it's easier for them to do that. And it's easier to invite people in from the front line to have a go and experiment with their thoughts and ideas.
So if you're a CEO, try stop making decisions for 3 months.
it takes real conviction, I think, of those principles to stick to them when times are particularly hard and stressful.
Fortunately, you had your staff to tell you to get the hell out of the way.
The key to the 4-day week is 100, 80, 100.
This stuff all appears, like, oh, we're going to do self-management. That's so overwhelming. But actually, you can take small steps. You can do small things.
Yeah. So at Happy, we recruit for a job description, but then we throw it away and work out what their talents are.
Actually, the intimacy with suppliers and customers happens at the edge of the organisation, not at the top.
In your next one-to-one or in your next team meeting, just listen.
Welcome to another episode of Work Punks. Today we have our special guest, Henry Stewart of the Happy company that provides training and consultancy support to organizations that want to join our movement to create joy at work, if the website is to be believed. So we're going to delve into what that means, Henry, in a minute. Of course, we have our other punks here. We have Ben Simpson and Colin Newlyn to really stick the needle in what gets Henry moving every single day. Right, Henry, we're really keen to hear more about what Happy is all about and how you really arrived at this point that you decided that bringing more joy to the workplace is what gets you up in the morning.
Okay, well, Happy has been in existence for 36 years. It used to be Happy Computers, which was based on IT training, but we moved around 2000 to Happy. A few key moments. First was in 1992 when I read the book Maverick by Ricardo Semler. And at that point, I was pretty much micromanaging. I would ring back from holiday to check people were doing their stuff, and that transformed Happy. We've given a copy of that book to every member of staff since then. And Ricardo Semler runs a company called Semco in Brazil, and he moved his company from where workers were searched on the gates to where they had complete trust and freedom to set their own targets, to choose their own manager, even to choose their own salary at some points. So that was the key transformational element. Since then, there've been a few other key elements, generally about books. So there was Multipliers by Liz Wiseman. Do you know Multipliers? Basically, it's have you had a manager with whom you've done less well than you expected? That would be a diminisher. Have you had a manager under whom you've done better than you expected? That would be a multiplier. And it's quite interesting. There's a little survey of with 10 elements in it, which look at whether you're a diminisher, whether you're an accidental diminisher, and most people generally are. So that had another transformational effect on Happy. And then there was Reinventing Organizations by Frederick Laloux, which I'm pretty much which is about which had 8 self-managing organizations in it. And then there was David Marquette, Turn the Ship Around. And I went on a panel with him in Copenhagen, and he was the commander of a US Navy submarine. And instead of telling 135 crew members what to do, he decided to let 125 crew members tell him what to do. The only thing that he was responsible for was firing the missiles, because he felt that was his responsibility. And I thought, wow, That sounds amazing. So from 2017, I came back to Happy and decided to make no decisions. And at that point, we were flatlining in sales. In the years afterwards, we grew by 25% a year because people took real accountability and real responsibility for their work. And so at the moment, I just create the framework for what to do at Happy. I don't make decisions. I just get to do what I love to do.
So how did the organization respond when you arrived back from your holiday, having read that book, saying, right, guys, we're going to do everything differently. You're in charge now.
Well, of course, it wasn't the same as when I'd been doing micromanagement. There was a lot of trust. There was lots of what we call pre-approval. There was lots of stuff like that. And so, yeah, people felt, yeah, let's go for it.
I wonder whether it'd be helpful for you to just outline very briefly what sits behind that expression of yours, pre-approval, because I think this is a real nugget actually for people.
Absolutely. So some managers get people to solve a problem, come up with a solution, and then at the end of it, bring it back for approval. Okay. What we talk about is agreeing the solution before they've come up with a solution. Yeah, but it's about freedom within guidelines. You know, most people don't like complete freedom. Most people don't like being told what to do. But what they do like is freedom within guidelines. And so let me give you an example of our website. So on our website, we did a branding exercise. So it was very clear what the branding was. We agreed the metrics, how much income was generated and how many views were had. Johnny went on the best search engine optimization course we could find. And we also insisted he'd be talking to the clients, that it wasn't just him, that he'd be talking to the clients. And when I saw that website the night before it launched, I wasn't that keen on it. I thought, what's this and what's that and what's this? But it was completely within the guidelines. So up it went. And when we got the metrics a couple of months later, the views had increased threefold, income had increased twofold, even without the benefit of my expertise.
So what do you think? So clearly it was a moment for you of a self-challenge, really, to not get onto the phone and say, I don't like this.
Yeah.
Take it down. So how do you help leaders to make that leap of faith, almost to let go of that decision-making power and not intervene, even when they don't like something?
Well, indeed. You have to get rid of the ego, really. You have to get rid of the ego. I mean, in my early days, I was very ego-ridden. I thought I knew everything. I knew it all, and over time, I've realized that I don't know it all. And so you have to get rid of the ego. But the thing is that people, that leaders really want to create a culture. Well, I would like to think they want to create a culture of happy workplaces, a culture where people have joy in their work. And they just need to work out how to do it.
Yeah, that story you told resonated with me, Henry, because anybody who's worked in a corporate, particularly I worked in marketing, a number of times you would labour over something and you'd put all your effort into it. And they go to senior manager and say, well, I don't like that colour.
Absolutely.
And it would drive people absolutely up the wall. I mean, it's just it's because it's actually disrespectful to all the effort and your judgment as an individual for someone just to come along and overrule you like that.
Exactly. There's an interesting quote from Reed Hastings, who's the head of Netflix, who says, at most companies, the boss is there to approve or block the decisions of employees. There's a surefire way to limit innovation and slow down growth. When the boss steps out of the role of decision approver, the entire business speeds up and innovation increases. And that why would you not want that? Why would you not want that?
I remember from a point in my career when I was still working at a bank that we were doing lots of projects, lots of strategy stuff, and we had this very expressive, really very clever boss of the team. But he was so clever that ultimately, even when he told us to come up with a proposal for something or another, and we worked on it for a couple of days, put a great presentation together, he would always take it apart completely, and we had to go back time and time again to rework it. And at some point you don't put the effort in anymore.
Exactly.
Right? So
exactly.
You just say, well, okay, let's put a few outlines down and then let him shoot at it first, because there's no point in putting all the effort in.
Yeah,
it's always going to be his product.
The great thing about pre-approval is you don't get that result.
Yeah.
You get people getting real ownership of their work.
Mm.
One of the other things that I think goes on in organisations, just back to your points, Colin, Paul, is we tend to think that everything needs to be a big thing and a step into the unknown. So we do tend to, conventionally, it's been, build us a business case for this, where we do loads of theoretical stuff, and then we ask the business to deploy a whole load of resources and step into the unknown. So that takes a long time, is quite a lot of risk. It's quite very often engenders the, only the people at the top can make this decision. Their views, opinion, knowledge and skills are superior to everybody else.
Whereas actually it's the frontline staff who have who are most in place with the customers, with the clients, with all that kind of thing,
Exactly right. So a way of switching that around is actually saying that we're going to do nothing big bang, step into the unknown. What we are going to do is to really embrace the habit of experimentation. And we're just going to try some small stuff that will take us down that line, and we'll learn. And that also, I think, is helpful to leaders who have lots of learnt behaviours about, ultimately, I'm responsible for this, therefore I don't want to delegate decision authority on this. It's too big. Well, if it's too big, then make it smaller. And then are you comfortable delegating that? So I think experimentation is such a key enabler. This is now coming back to Paul's question. How do we create the environment where bosses are more able to let go? Well, if our change philosophy is more incremental and organic and less big bang, then it's easier for them to do that. And it's easier to invite people in from the front line to have a go and experiment with their thoughts and ideas.
Well, that's interesting, actually. Experiment. Yeah, I do preach experimentation, but it's also possible to do some big stuff, and to do that from the front line. We had a local authority client on one of our level 7 senior leader courses, and she was in charge of children's services, and they when they found somebody who wanted to go into care, they would get a panel together. It would take ages. It would take probably about 3 months. So she got a team to just do it straight away, because of course when kids want to go into care, they need to go into care straight away. And up to £100,000, she said that they would be able to do that. And she looked back at them, because she needs to do that. She looked back at them, and for every one of them, she felt that she was fine with how it worked.
So you have a leadership program that you deliver with Happy?
Yeah, we have a 4-day program spread over 3 months, but we also have a level 7 senior leader program, which we like to call the Happy MBA. And that's spread over 2 years, and that really transforms organizations.
So why does it take 2 years to acquire the confidence and the skills to do this kind of work?
Well, because I guess there's a lot in it, but the point about the 2 years is you actually go away and do the stuff. It's called an apprenticeship. And you go away if you learn coaching, you go away and coach people. If you learn how to create trust and freedom, you go away and create the trust and freedom. So people are going back, coming back to the sessions, discussing with the other people. It's you know, it works really well.
So we were just talking about the challenge of learning, which people get by going on those two learning interventions you've just described. But there's also the flip side of that same coin, perhaps, Henry, which is unlearning and letting go. You know, by the time people get to be a senior leader in any sort of organization, they're likely to have got there because they're seen as being really knowing their stuff. So, you know, they have that sort of knowledge authority by being decisive and being clear and setting direction and inspiring other people to follow. And then what we're advocating, and you Happy very clearly advocating, it's quite different to that. So what tactics have you seen work well to help people meet that, let's call it the unlearning challenge, leaving behind the habits of old?
I suppose I've done the unlearning challenge, haven't I? You know, when I started to stop making decisions, that we've had various CEOs have we've had to try to stop making decisions. We asked CEO to do it for 3 months. Right. So if you're a CEO, try stop making decisions for 3 months, and then but then they generally go on with it. They generally carry on doing it beyond the 3 months.
Our guest last week, Jeff Marlowe, talks about similar stuff. He talks about having the sense-making, decision-taking and action-taking sort of closely coupled at the lowest level you can.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he put a post up this week, and there was a conversation followed on about rather, you couldn't change people's mindsets if there were external influences on them to stop them doing it. So which sort of comes back to Ben's point about bosses not wanting to delegate the responsibility because it's too big, and their boss is going to say to them, well, this is your decision because it's a big project. And so what have you got to say about the sort of importance of having the boundaries set before you start sort of doing this?
Well, absolutely. It is about freedom within guidelines. It is about, you know, what the budget is, how many people you need to talk to, all that kind of thing. But I mean, it's interesting about, you know, there are some bosses who simply can't be. You know, they're you know, we don't generally work with unhappy workplaces. You know, where I was recently at working with the leadership team of a charity, and along the mantelpiece there were 13 Best Workplace Awards. And a month later, the chief executive sent me an email with the 8 things they had done as a result of my presentation. Now, if it was an unhappy workplace, they'd probably have barely thought of having a meeting to think about how to do the things from my presentation. Whereas if you are on the road to a happy workplace, you can really do stuff.
I seem to remember that at some point you were sharing also that happy itself wasn't in the best place, and that you were having to rethink how you did things. Was that the trigger to really go full Semco, so to speak, or had you already started with the self-managing concept?
I think we had started with a self-managing concept. I think that was during the pandemic, that one. That was, you know, there was a point at which I said, we've only lost £30,000 this month. And because we did, you know, in the pandemic, we lost 95% of our income.
Yeah,
wow. And we then, you know, we then managed to get stuff online, but clients weren't always interested in online. But now we're 50-50 classroom online. So through the pandemic, we lost 300,000. In the first year of the pandemic, we lost 300,000. But it was interesting in the pandemic because in the beginning of the pandemic, the first 2 weeks, I thought, oh, I need to take leadership. I need to do stuff. I need to tell people what to do. I need to do this. And it really didn't work. It didn't work at all. And then I went back, there was a CEO breakfast that we ran that somebody said, you don't need to do this, Henry. You need to just step back. And I did step back. And as a result of that, we managed to, we managed to get it all to work.
That's fascinating, isn't it? And it takes it takes real conviction, I think, of those principles to stick to them when times are particularly hard and stressful.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
there's one of the examples in Lalou's book was the energy company in the States.
Yep.
I think, which was very successful, and then the downturn happened, and the guy got thrown out, and they went back to command and control.
Yes, absolutely.
Because they're in a crisis and they didn't have the confidence to see it through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fortunately, you had your staff to tell you to get the hell out of the way.
Absolutely, exactly. And I'm hoping that they will continue to do so.
Have you seen, since the pandemic and the advent of online working and flexible working, have you seen more interest or have you seen no development in interest in terms of different working practices?
Absolutely. We've seen a huge increase in different working practices. So yeah, there's a lot. People have come to us a lot, and now, in the early days of Happy, 36 years ago, happy workplace was not really a thing, was it? Who would think about a happy workplace? Whereas now there are lots of competitors, lots of people that are looking at happy workplace and looking at how to create joy at work, and so I like to think things have moved on.
Well, that's a positive development. And you've been working on the 4-day working week as well in your organization, I understand.
Absolutely. And the key to the 4-day week is 100-80-100. You get 100% of the salary for 80% of the time, as long as you're 100% as productive. So we've been going on it for about 20 months. So the UK pilot had 61 people in it, and virtually all of them became 100% as productive as they were before. And so, what we talk about being productive is, is our customer evaluation as good as it was before, and do we get as much done? Okay, our customer evaluation has gone up, and we had in the first year we had 15%, in the next year 10%, 10% of sales without any increase in staff. So we do definitely get as much done.
And what does it mean? What, as an organization, do you then have to let go of? Where do you get the 20% from?
You let go of a lot of meetings. You basically, I do a thing called a productivity blitz, which is 5 days in 5 times 15 minutes in the morning, 5 times 15 minutes in the afternoon. And in the early days of it, nobody at Happy was particularly interested in the productivity blitz. But when they did the 4-day week, they were very interested in the productivity blitz. And basically that's about Pomodoros, key tasks, getting rid of meetings, how to solve your email overload, all that kind of stuff.
I have a sneaking suspicion there's another book that's about to be released into the wild. And I know that you're very generous in sharing the first book, the Happy Manifesto, and I believe it has been or is still free as PDF. So
absolutely,
as a example of your strong intent to see change in the world. So what's the message in the new book, and why did that message need to go out?
Okay, the new book is Creating Joy at Work, 501 ideas to create a happy workplace. And the reason I created it was because it's always been what I wanted to look for in books. You know, I want to look for stories in books. I want to look for real examples in books. And so I thought I would create a book that had tons of real examples, so that people, you know, you might not want to know all the 501, but there'll be little things that you want to find, and that's what I wanted to make go for it. We're just about to do the copy editing, and it will probably be out in April.
That sounds a great resource, because I think it's really, you know, the sort of message I always put to people is this stuff all appears, you know, like, oh, we're going to do self-management. That's so overwhelming. But actually, you can take small steps. You can do small things to start to shift along that line. Totally. Before you know it, you've actually gone quite a long distance.
Absolutely.
There's lots of non-threatening, non-scary ideas in there. Then that's a great.
That's it. That's what it's all about.
So out of the 501 ideas, which are your 3 top tips?
My 3 top tips, I on our Happy Manifesto podcast, I always ask for 3 top tips for happy workplaces. And the 3 top tips are play to your strengths, right? Gallup has asked over 1 million people, do you get to do what you do best at work every day? Guess what percentage say yes to that?
About
16.
You're right, Ben. You're right.
No way. I must have. Sorry, I'm not being teacher's pet. Let me just be really clear about this. I'm not being teacher's pet. I must subliminally. It must have been in there.
Yeah.
But,
okay.
Yeah. So sorry. Should have shut up.
That's fine. That's fine. But where they do get to do what they're best at, they're 30 to 40% more productive. So at Happy, we recruit for a job description, but then we throw it away and work out what their talents are. So play to your strengths. Number 2, be trusted and given freedom to make your own decisions. Yeah. Not with any approval or any hierarchy or anything like that. And number 3, have managers, instead of telling people what to do, coach them. Help them find their own solutions.
Nice.
So we're a self-managing organization, I like to think, but we do have coaches. We have coaches who support people.
Yeah, I was going to say, when you were talking about the pre-approval, what happens, you know, if someone's going to take that on, that's great. But, you know, what happens when they get stuck, when they get into problems?
They talk to somebody else. They don't talk to the manager. They talk to somebody else.
Yeah, I think that's a bit of a common misconception, isn't it? Is that by not making decisions, you abdicate responsibility, untrue, and you also completely step away and leave people to it, also untrue, I think, when this is done well. So it isn't to say that the organization denies itself the benefit of the skills, knowledge, and experience of the people at the top. It's saying, actually, we need everybody on the pitch. We need everybody's ideas, because although those in more exalted positions may have greater experience, maybe have great knowledge, it comes back to something that Henry said earlier. Actually, the intimacy with suppliers and customers happens at the edge of the organization, not at the top. Yeah. So with all these things, I think it's about bringing all of that skills, knowledge, experience, perspectives, information, insight, observations together to make a better decision than any one individual would have made. But very often, I think people think, oh, it's just. I just walk away. I abdicate my responsibility as a leader. It's not that. No,
but the key is to coach people. That's the key, you know. So one thing I say to people is in your next one-to-one or in your next team meeting, just listen. Yeah, don't tell people what to do. Just listen to people, and that works really well.
Now, a lot of managers have arrived at their managerial position because they're great at solving problems. They think they're good at telling people what to do. We may think otherwise. but they're generally quite action oriented. They like taking control of things. They like solving problems. They like firefighting. So that coaching ability, that listening, that sitting back, the asking questions bit, that's not natural to them. So how do you best help them?
Well, some people shouldn't be managers. Okay, I mean, there was a CMI survey that found that 49% of the working population would take a pay cut to change their manager. So one thing that we propose, where if you're not a self-managing organisation, is that people should be able to choose their manager. Yeah, and that's worked quite well in some organisations. And some people don't like being a manager. You know, I just wrote recently on a LinkedIn blog about how was the founder of Apple, the co-founder of Apple with Steve Jobs, how when Steve Jobs went to him and said, we need to form Apple, and he was at HP, and he said, and Steve Jobs said to us, you'll get you get to manage lots of people, and Steve Jobs said, no, I don't really want that. And Steve Jobs came back and said, yeah, you'll get to meet manage lots of people. And then there was a guy, God, I've forgotten the name of him. There was a guy that was his investor and said to Steve Jobs, Woz doesn't want to manage people. He wants just to create lots of resources. So Steve Jobs went back to him and said, you know, you're going to have loads of resources and you'll never have to manage anybody. And Woz then went from HP to Apple. So there are a lot of people who don't really want to manage people.
There's also quite a lot of people that want to manage people but shouldn't be allowed to.
They are indeed, but we often find that they're people who actually really don't want to manage people anyway. Now we had a client who had a marketing director who lost half of the staff every year, but was brilliant at marketing. And they said, what do we do? What can we do about this? And we came to them and said, well, look, why don't you just choose somebody else who is good with people, and place that marketing director simply as a marketing consultant. And it went really well. You know, but that marketing director loved that, because she didn't really like managing people. She what she wanted to do was market.
Well, on that positive note, I think we should be concluding this episode of Work Punks. Henry, it's been really fascinating to hear you talk about your own journey with Happy, as well as all the examples from the organizations that you've inspired and helped along the way. So again, plenty of resources there for us all to explore further. Thanks enormously for joining us today, Henry, and you viewers and listeners. Thanks for being there today, and hopefully we'll see you at one of our next episodes. Bye.
Thank you.
Awesome. Cheerio. Bye.
Bye.